What if the reason you feel stuck isn't because you lack talent, but because you're thinking too small? There was a man who conquered most of the known world before the age of 33. Not slowly, not cautiously, relentlessly. His name was Alexander the Great. And his story isn't just history. It's a blueprint for how power, discipline, and belief shape reality. Alexander wasn't born into comfort. He was born into expectation. His father, Philip II, was already a powerful king, a conqueror, a strategist. And from a young age, Alexander understood something most people avoid. You don't inherit greatness. You prove it. At just 16 years old, while his father was away, Alexander was left in charge. A rebellion broke out. Most people would hesitate, wait for help, avoid risk. Alexander didn't. He crushed the rebellion immediately and built a city on its ruins, not out of cruelty, but to send a message. I act. I don't wait. That's the first lesson. Hesitation kills momentum. Most people overthink. They wait for certainty. They wait until they feel ready. But by the time they move, the opportunity is already gone. Alexander moved before he felt ready. And that's why he stayed ahead of everyone else. But here's where it gets deeper. Alexander wasn't just bold. He was trained. His tutor was Aristotle, one of the greatest minds in history. From him, Alexander didn't just learn philosophy. He learned how to think, how to question, how to see beyond what's in front of him. Because power isn't just physical, it's mental. You can't lead others if you can't lead your own mind. You can't conquer anything if you're ruled by distraction, emotion, or fear. And Alexander understood this early. He didn't just train his body, he trained his focus. While others were distracted, he was preparing. Then came the moment that changed everything. At 20 years old, his father was assassinated. And suddenly, Alexander became king. Now imagine that pressure. Young, unproven, surrounded by enemies waiting for him to fail. This is where most people collapse. Alexander did the opposite. He eliminated threats immediately, secured his position, and then, without hesitation, launched one of the most ambitious campaigns in history. Why? Because he understood something most people never realize. If you don't move forward, you move backward. Comfort is a trap. Stagnation is slow death. So he marched from Greece to Egypt to Persia, all the way to India. Not because it was easy, but because he refused to limit himself to what already existed. And here's the part that matters most for you. Alexander didn't believe in limits. When his men looked at the Persian Empire, they saw something impossible. Too big, too powerful, too established. Alexander saw something else. An opportunity. That's the second lesson. The world looks different depending on how you think. Where most people see obstacles, a focused mind sees openings. Where most people see risk, a disciplined mind sees leverage. This is why most people stay average. Not because they lack ability, but because they accept limits that were never real. Alexander didn't. But let's be honest. It wasn't all strength. It wasn't all clarity. There were moments of anger, moments of impulsiveness, moments where emotion almost cost him everything. And this is important because it connects directly to your life. Power without control becomes destruction. Alexander won battles because of his discipline, but he also made mistakes because of his emotions. That's the third lesson. Control is what turns potential into power. You can be smart, you can be talented, you can have ambition, but if you can't control your reactions, you will sabotage your own progress. This is why most people never reach their full potential, not because they lack ability, but because they lack discipline. Alexander didn't just command armies, he inspired them. He fought alongside his men, bled with them, shared their struggles. Why? Because leadership isn't about authority. It's about presence. People don't follow titles, they follow certainty. And Alexander had it. Even when the odds were against him. Even when the path wasn't clear. That's the fourth lesson. People follow those who move with conviction. If you doubt yourself, others will too. If you hesitate, others will hesitate. But when you move with clarity, even without guarantees, people feel it, and that's influence. But here's where the story takes a turn. At the height of his power, after conquering more than anyone thought possible, Alexander kept going, further, deeper, harder, until eventually, even his own army refused to continue. They were exhausted, broken, done. And for the first time, Alexander had to stop, not because he was defeated, but because he pushed too far. That's the final lesson, and it's the one most people ignore. Power without awareness becomes self-destruction. Ambition is necessary. Drive is necessary. Relentless action is necessary. But if you don't know when to pause, when to adjust, when to listen, you can lose everything you built. Alexander died at just 32 years old, at the peak of his power, and when asked who his empire should go to, he said, "To the strongest." And just like that, everything he built began to fracture, because even the greatest conqueror couldn't control what came after him. So what does this mean for you? It means this. You don't need to conquer the world, but you do need to conquer yourself, your hesitation, your distractions, your fear of acting, because your life is shaped the same way empires are, by decisions, by discipline, by what you do when it's uncomfortable. Alexander didn't wait for the perfect moment. He became it. He didn't ask for permission. He moved. And that's the difference between those who lead and those who watch. So ask yourself, where are you hesitating? Where are you thinking too small? Where are you waiting instead of acting? Because the opportunity isn't gone. It's just waiting for someone decisive enough to take it. And if you don't, someone else will. You don't need more time. You don't need more motivation. You need clarity. You need discipline. You need action. Because in the end, the world doesn't remember those who almost acted. It remembers those who did. And the only question left is, will you?